feels like you just ate shit. What's the plan in the next few months? What are you thinking?
Well, we're not fundraising for a few months.
Hi.
So,
All right. Hello, friends. My name is Wilson.
I'm Cass.
Welcome back to another episode of Two Kids and a Startup, where we dive behind the scenes on building a startup while being parents of two. Today, we're going to be talking about the world of fundraising and everything about that, building a pitch deck.
A winning pitch deck.
Ooh, the winning pitch deck. That means that we're going to raise millions of dollars with the pitch deck. So without further ado, let's dive right in. It's actually interesting, and why we chose to talk about this topic is because we are in the process of building a pitch deck, and it's been many years that we've been building these pitch decks.
We're always building a pitch deck.
Always.
How many pitch decks have we done?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of pitch decks.
Sam hates me.
And I think what's important to say is that pitch decks can be used for a variety of reasons, which is why we're always building a pitch deck, whether it is to use it for doing some BD and we need to bring on clients, or it is to illustrate an idea to get your team to buy into it. Or they're even creating a pitch deck for us because they want us to approve their ideas. So there's so many different ways that a pitch deck can be utilized. And so that's why we always have about 50,000 of them.
And it's important because we need to be able to cater the point that we're trying to make to the opposing party and to really illustrate why we are a perfect fit, whether it is us being a vendor of like, hey, we are a perfect fit because of so-and-so reason, and illustrate it in a way that people can actually visualize. I see your point now, because everything is stuck in here. How can we extract what you have in your mind and to be able to convey that to someone across the screen, across the world? And that, I think, is a really important skill set that anyone should have, whether you're running a business, whether you're raising capital, whether you want to start a project or find like brand sponsorship. Funny story. That's how I landed my first quote unquote sponsorship from New Balance.
Oh, I remember. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And, having said that, adding on to your idea, selling your idea, but also it also shows your level of execution behind the front-facing pitch deck. It's really your commitment to this work, your delivery, the fact that you're, even with your New Balance as an example, how often are people coming back to preparing a pitch deck thoroughly for this intended audience for them? That's really key. And creating a cohesive story, it's a much easier way to say yes than to just verbally talk about it, because they can sit on it, they can think on it. The work that you shows. This is the first piece of work you're giving to get graded, essentially. So there's so much power in a pitch deck, and which is why we're having this topic today.
Yeah. Like so much successes through pitch decks. And I think a lot of people think of pitch deck as like, oh, it's like troublesome, or it's like, oh, overrated, or actually I think it's very underrated on that note, right? And so
there is a magic, kind of like someone knocking on the door, going door to door to ask for things. It's the same thing as creating a pitch deck. And so that is why we have 1 million of them.
Yeah, it has to be tailored, it has to be customized, because you want to be able to understand what's in it for you right away as the receiving end. And so if we're switching it behind, like the stance a little bit, it's more about how are you preparing something that is so easy that it's going to be a yes. I just need to say yes, because I understand what the opportunity is, what is it that you can help me solve, and how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it, and how are we going to win together? Then it becomes okay, cool, this is a no-brainer. Let's do it. Here's the money, or here's your merch, or here's the partnership. Really, I think is important. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say it is because of these pitch decks that has gotten us to where we are today.
100%.
And
100%. All the
clients that we
partnerships.
have,
Yeah.
the partnerships that we have, the events that we've thrown, any type of income opportunity, it has
Opportunities,
been
yeah.
started with a pitch deck.
Totally. Like, for example, like all the brands that we've worked with, like Samsung, Canon, Diesel, TNT, like Nespresso, like all these big brands, it all comes from the deck and conveying in information. And it all brings us back to like our biggest kind of goal this season is to create a pitch deck in order for us to raise capital from venture capitalists in order for us to build out the vision of our loyalty platform for gamers. And I think that's a really, really exciting thing, because as an entrepreneur that has been in the brick and mortar business, traditional business, not in the tech world, it's very different looking into the startup tech scene to see how it functions and how the internal nooks and crannies work. And that, wow, when you can actually raise capital, you can actually create something that has a much bigger impact that serves much more people in the world. And that's why you need the capital to do so. And so for me, that is a really big challenge that I'm very excited to continue to conquer.
So having said that, how did this journey unfold? And, you know, and where we are at today, because we've kind of start, stop, pause, stop, pause. And why don't we talk a little bit more about where we've been and where we're going?
You know what? Fundraising 1.0 was fun.
I don't know if fun is the right word.
It is not fun. You're right. Yeah. The amount
It's
of
fun
no's.
to learn,
Yeah.
but hard.
It is very, very, very difficult because of, first of all, the number of no's that you get is just, man, it sucks. Like, it doesn't matter how many no's I've gotten before up until this point. Every time you get a no, it feels like you just ate shit. It's like, it sucks a lot. You know you won't die from it, but you know you're going to keep eating it. That's the analogy. It sucks a lot. Yeah. And every time I come home to you, I'm like, oh, guys, this sucks.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I think we've learned a lot through that process. And, you know, I think having said that, I think as of right now, we've been a lot more intentional and strategic in how we're going about pitching. I think for now, where are we at right now?
Where are we at right now? We're a lot more prepared in terms of how we are approaching pitching. Because I guess, like, let's rewind a little bit about, like, to begin with, when we were pitching, we did a compilation of all the different VCs out in the marketplace, created a database, and we just cold emailed them. We networked a bunch and to have meetings, get referrals. And it was a very shotgun type of approach where you spray and pray. Hopefully someone's gonna, you know, say yes to you. And it did work to that note. It was good.
It's a bit of a numbers game.
It is 100% a numbers game. Yeah. Yeah. We had over $1 million in soft commits at one point, and the market just wasn't working out. And it, yeah, people were just not committing. Everyone's just waiting. It's 2023, early 2023. That was like the bottom of the market when everything has just dried up, right? And
timing is very important in that when it comes to that. And, you know, I like what you said before about sometimes it's just not you, it's them. It's like dating. It's like, it's not you, it's them. And so having said that, I think what's different about this round is that we're being very intentional. We have really decided to bite the bullet and intentfully pause, which is very hard to say, because I think it is very, you know, for such a long time we were running and trying to get the money, and then to do it because we believe in our product so that we could build up a higher valuation for our company, let's say in a couple months time.
Man, you know what, this, like, it's really, really, why it's so difficult is because you're seeing tens and thousands of dollars burn every single month. And that's the reality. It's like you are burning money and you're not having any revenue. You don't have anything coming in. And it's like looking at your bank account and you're like, uh-oh, it's counting down on the monthly basis. Every day you don't have the funding come through. What are you going to do? Right?
But on the flip side, like, I feel like, okay, yes, we always go back and forth with this because Wilson's always like, I mean, he's seeing me spend the dollars and he's like, where can I go find the funds to replenish that? But having said that, like, I feel like that doesn't end. Like, when you, and this has always been like that topic of conversation, because even if we, let's say all the stars aligned, we get the funding, it doesn't mean that the work stops there and now we have a ton of money to do this. It just means that we're now building at a faster rate because we're held accountable to someone else who is now looking for these milestones, these returns by this date. And you have not only yourself to be accountable, you have other people breathing down your back on when this, how much this, why are we doing this? And that is why we had intentionally to be like, hey, I think we can buy more time, have a little bit more of a runway so that we still have the autonomy to drive it the way that we want to drive.
You know what? I've got to thank you for that, as much as I hate it, because it's the truth. You're right. It is, without fail, any founders that I've talked to has shared with me the exact same thing. It's like, if you can delay taking on capital, you should delay taking on capital, because to your point precisely. And that's always a dilemma. And I guess as a founder's main job is for us to continue to preach, for us to continue to spread the mission, get enough people to trust in your vision that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course, the product needs to match. Of course, the metrics and everything needs to stand that up. But nonetheless, I know for a fact that the job of fundraising does not stop. It is ongoing. And you raise your seed round, you're on to the next round, because that's the timer. It's on. You have 18, 24 months until your next round. And you got to be able to perform. You got to be able to bring in the results, and you got to be able to sell to even more investors that can eventually hit a point of scale that you can have an exit. And that's really the game.
Yeah.
That's really the game. Yeah.
At least our goal.
That's the goal. Yeah. So to be able to either go for an IPO or have it acquired, I think is really the goal of why venture capitalists is there. So then that way we can generate a return for everyone involved. Yeah.
So after building 1 million pitch decks, I feel like we've now, through that process, have learned how to combine our brains together and do it well, because initially it was not like that.
Because you were not on board yet. That's why it was not like that.
Yeah, that's right. When I saw some of the pitch decks, I'm like, wait, what?
Well, you know what? We got to where we are, so, and that's the reason why we are only at where we are, is really what it is. I feel like that, truly. Like, I think that with us and your combination, we can achieve much greater heights. Yeah.
What do you think the most important part of the pitch deck is?
Honestly, is storytelling. Like, pitch deck is all about storytelling. Can you tell a compelling enough story that checks all the boxes, right? Does it have the right plot? Does it have the right conflict? Does it have the right resolution? Does it have the right character? And if you have all those things lined up, you tell a great story, it moves me, it excites me, you've done your job. That's really what it is, right? So that means a combination of the script, the combination of the visuals, the graphics, aesthetics, and yeah, I think that's really what it is storytelling.
And actually, I feel like me and you, like, that's how we kind of started a little bit different, because you were so focused on the visuals and storytelling. Like, I feel like you would work more closely with the designer,
The creatives,
to build a pitch deck versus I think you even valued the design of it more than the financial projections. Right? Like it's like, because you're thinking about how do I get my foot in the door?
Yep. You're right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you always say that I lack the substance per se. And I'm like, that sucks to hear. I lack the substance, but look at what we've accomplished. Come on. But it's true. It's true to some degree where the focus was wrong. Like, it's not like we're not building the right product or we know what we're doing, but the focus was wrong. The focus was too much into the storytelling.
Yeah. I think you're thinking about it from when you're pitching, like driving it, but actually there's a point also, like sometimes when you're not face to face, how can you tell the story without you being there? And I think that is something that's also an important part of the pitch deck, is being able to tell the story without your narrative, but in a way that is really nice and concise. And for me, I feel like when I went to work on a pitch deck, like every page is like a deep dive of what is the problem we want to highlight, because we can position it in a million different ways. And to narrow down, like, for example, the biggest problem statement to hook the investor to be like, this is a problem you're right, it's a very big $ problem. And it's a big enough problem for me to want to invest in you to build up the solution for.
And that is very true. And I think the compromise that we made is that the reason why we work well together is because we come in from two different perspectives, and both is very much needed to tell a great story that can be stood up.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like even finessing like the hook of it, which I think I've learned from you, is what is it that will get them to open up the email and read it and like, oh, this is enough. Okay, now let me continue that conversation.
Yeah. And what I've learned is that, as a compromise, we should have multiple different versions of the deck depending on who is it that we're pitching. Not to say that we are changing our products, but rather it's like, what are we focusing on within our product?
The positioning.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's like the positioning. And
so like, for example, if we're talking to someone who is in Web3 or in the crypto industry and knows what this all is, we would probably talk more about the technology versus someone who is in Web2 who is completely against Web3. We don't even want the words NFTs. Crypto, NFT in it. And we go through the copy and be like, this is not it, And so these are the little details around tailoring it to your audience is so key.
Yeah. So having those different decks available and having those different pitches ready, and to be able to switch gears when you know who you're talking to is very, very important. Yeah. And it's actually, funny enough, when you say that, like being able to even get a chance of the meeting is also, and to have the opportunity to pitch is also a skill and an art by itself. Because a lot of times it's not about just the pitch deck, because these VCs, they get hundreds, if not thousands of pitches all the time. How can you make sure that they read it and give you the meeting? Because your goal of the pitch deck is for them to read it, to circulate it, and to have a meeting with their VP of investments and to have it in their IC group. But how do you get through that door?
That's like round one. The pitch deck is round one. Round two is like the meeting.
The meeting. How do you land the meeting? How do you even get the meeting is so difficult. Because the thing is, if you cannot even network your way to get a meeting from the VCs, how are you able to go out there and knock doors down to break into the mass market that your job is set out for you to do?
I love that we actually are talking about this in phases. Round 3 could be like fighting Bowser, and that would be getting the money. It's like showing, the numbers. The data room.
Ooh, the data room.
Okay, but back to round 2. I love that we're talking about this phase because we actually learned through our journey together how to perfect the pitch deck. Secondly, it's how do you get the meeting to stand out? Like, how do we creatively come up with a way to get in front of the VCs? Because we've been through, maybe share more about what you initially did and what we ended up doing so that we could get as much FaceTime with the right people.
Yeah, I guess to start off, let's kind of set the stage for people that don't know. Like, we don't come from a tech background at all, and so we don't know the networks and the community that these VCs hang out in. And so it really sucked. I still remember when I was at the GDC conference, and I was there for 3 days, and I was just not getting the invites in the right rooms to talk to the right people. The people that I was talking to are equally as lost, if not like a little bit more behind in their steps in their whole journey. And so your goal is to be able to be in the right room, because now you get access to the right VCs, have those convos, set the meetings for when you're back home. And I still remember coming back and I was really bummed out, because I'm like, damn it, why didn't I get those meetings? Because I used to get those meetings, but now I don't. And taking what I've learned, I'm like, okay, instead of getting invites from the meetings, why don't I create my own event to invite VCs to come? And of course, that is a much harder thing to do without a network.
And also like more time and effort and dollars.
Yeah.
But it does creatively get you to stand out.
100%.
Because how many pitch decks are VC seeing? How many people want to set up a time?
Yeah.
Versus this.
You get the FaceTime. And then so for VCs, when we set up the event in New York, we had like 30 plus like prominent VCs come through the doors. We have founders come through the doors, and it was a really, really good event. We had a bunch of great responses from that. And the reason why it was a great event and why it was so beneficial for us is because the way we set up the event was, what's in it for the VCs to come?
Yeah.
And so from their perspective, they're looking for deal flows. They're looking to connect with like-minded individuals of the same caliber. That's what they want to be and spend their time. That gives them the most return.
Yeah.
And so that was how we positioned the entire event. And so when one person that is a prominent VC comes, then other people will be like, oh, he's there, I'm going to join the party. And then everyone else joins the party. And so you create this kind of herd mentality even within the VCs to be able to come to your event. And yeah.
And what you said about positioning is so important, even when it's the event, because you're not positioning to be like, hey, I want to pitch my idea to you. It's, hey, what's in it for them, which is get connected to high caliber
founders and also
but not to
peers,
pitch,
not
but
to pitch,
to network in a small intimate dinner to learn and connect with each other
and to have the latest insights, and those are the events that they want to go to as well, because they don't want to go to an event that they get pitched 10 times on projects that they have no interest in because they're not even at that caliber. And so that became that was really how we were able to get the mill in soft commit last round when we did it. Right. And I think that's a really great insight for people, that not only are you creating pitch deck, the round two, as phase two is what we're talking about, is getting the VCs to read and actually entertain your pitch deck is really the case. So you got to do very creative networking and business development initiatives out there before you go to phase three, the Bowser time.
Getting the data room and the numbers cleaned up. But
yeah,
that in itself is another, that is just work.
That's
just work.
That's where the real rubber hits the road. That's like to since we talked about it, let's just finish off that point, is really they're going to dive into everything that you have been doing and just double checking whatever you're selling them. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Does the numbers add up? Why is it your projection like this? What is the future looking like? Do you have all your T's crossed and I's dot? And if you have, then it moves on to the next stage of you getting funding. So yeah.
Yeah. So where are we now?
We are in the process of building our product. to ensure that we get the traction before we go fundraise? Is that a trick question? Like, you know what? I'm like, oh man, I really don't want to answer that because I'm like, no, we're gonna go fundraising
It's a
right
practice. I'm incepting you to. It's always a battle. It's like, I'm gonna go fundraising, and I'm like, why? Stop. It's like I think it's time. It's just such a struggle.
It is such a struggle.
But yeah,
and on top of that, like fundraising, you need to be prepared to fundraise when you don't need it. Is really what it is, because it is
generating the FOMO.
Yes, and on top of that, relationships takes time to build.
Yeah,
they need to see your progression, because VCs are also people. The more they know you, the more they trust you, the more they're willing to write that check. And if you are in a desperate state and you go to them to ask for money, they're not going to back a loser per se. They want to back winners. So that's why.
I'd back a loser. It's not.
No, it's a business for them, right? So they want to make sure that you are going to be a winner. And so the positioning really matters when it comes down to it. And which is why I'm like, okay, you know what? We're not fundraising, but I'll take the meetings. I'll prepare, lay the seed, let them know what we're building, how are we progressing, keep people up to date, send regular emails, quarterly emails to be like, hey, this is where we are at.
And often I find Wilson coming back into the office like, I had a great meeting. I told them we're not fundraising, but they're kind of talking about how we could get funding from them and offering a bit of this. I'm like, it always goes back to, actually one of the biggest lesson learned is, for me, is like, why do we need it? Do we need it right now, and when? And staying true to this and like anchoring us to be able to sit on that note for us to be like, yes or no.
You know why that is what makes you the perfect partner? Because you always say no to me. You always say no to me.
Keep you grounded.
You keep me grounded. There's a check and balances. It's like, hey, you know what? Stop dreaming. Come back down to the world, to the ground. Let's continue to build. It is actually super important on that note to have a partner that can balance you out like that. Because if we were just putting our heads down and just building and not really doing the network and the relationship building, so when the time does come that you need the funding, like, where are you going to get the money? And vice versa. And if you just focus on getting the money and you have nothing being built, how are you going to substantiate that? How are you going to perform? And so it really is needed for this startup to work, is to have really good partners, co-founders.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I didn't even say thank you yet. Thank you. In the future, what's our plan for Attack in fundraising? What do you think?
Well, we're not fundraising for a few months.
Hi.
So when we are at a point where we are about to fundraise, I think it's great. I feel like we're very intentional in that. I feel like the experiences that we have brought us to a point where, round one in creating the pitch deck, I feel like we're absolute pros. Round two with the getting the meeting, I think it's not even about getting the meeting. It's having a bit more of a forethought in being strategic in how to get that meeting and building out what is it that they're looking for, who is it that we want, screening who we want, tailoring it down, what are we looking for, and filling it in that way. I think we've learned a lot.
It's easier said than being done. I agree with you.
And so yeah. And, for us also, I feel like we are going, I have so much faith in what we're doing, and that
Me too.
We are going to be able to build a much better and clearer traction. Not that we don't have a lot of traction already, but have it be more meaningful.
Proven as well.
Meaningful for the purpose of fundraising. And then I think that'll knock down some doors.
And man, at the same time, what pulls me on the other side of like, yo, we got to go now, is because currently the market is so hot and there's momentum, right? And so the biggest lesson that I've learned throughout the last cycle before everything went south is that when the momentum is gone, it's gone. Like, as much as you have a great product, like, you just, no one's going to open their checkbook, and it's as simple as that. which it in itself is, it tells me that, okay, now we're in a different cycle, market's picking up again. We got to make sure that we're on that boat before it lifts off.
So actually, that's so funny because recently we had a conversation about this. You exactly came to me and was like, the market is hot. We need to start fundraising right now because we're going to be able to get it. We need to time the market. And you know what I said was, I was like, no, we need to pause, but there's so many other ways to find money, right? Not in the amount that we were looking for, but what is the amount that we need to give us that runway? Exactly. Take one more step.
One more step.
And
yes.
so, you know, that was exploring grants, that was exploring BD opportunities, that is exploring, you know, other pitch competitions.
You know,
and yeah.
And we have done that, and to some success now, which is great. And we haven't landed any deals yet, but we're about to. Actually, we got a deal last year from Near, and it was a 6-figure deal, which is great. It allowed us to extend our runway. And honestly, it's just more like there is a big ecosystem partner that trusts us. Top 10 layer 1 protocol, they trust us enough to execute and for us to be at their biggest developer conference. And I'm like, wow, that means a lot. And then now the conversations are happening again, which is taking time, but nonetheless.
The balance of always fundraising or BD.
Oh man,
That's his job.
That's my job. That's my job. But nonetheless, exciting year, a very exciting year, because
we're gonna end of year, we're gonna rake it in with the fundraising.
And that's only the start and beginning, which is like, you know what? It's funny enough. It's like people spend so much time and effort into doing fundraising. And then once you get the funds, it's really the beginning of it all.
The chasing of it all. It's kind of like having a kid. People think like, oh, the newborn phase is hard, or the pregnancy is hard. But really, that's the beginning of it. Now you have a child, or now you have a kindergartner, or now you have a da-da-da-da.
Wow, what a great way of putting it. A great analogy. You're right. It's like raising a kid. It's like that's only the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think as an entrepreneur, that is like a new chapter that is so exciting. When you see those headlines, you're like, whoa. But nonetheless, exciting times. Lots that we're learning. I'm grateful to be able to build this with you and just go on this journey. I think it's incredibly fun. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it this week, guys. Actually, I'm very curious to know what other people are experiencing through their fundraising journey, or whether or not people even think of fundraising.
Pitching. I wouldn't even say it would be fundraising, because honestly, there's so much magic behind just pitching. It doesn't have to be for fundraising. Could be for pitching an idea. Could be for pitching your brand, influencer partnerships. There's so much power. Getting clients. Startups getting clients.
That is true.
What are you doing with? How do you go about pitching?
Oh, why? How about this? How about leave a comment below? Let us know what is it that you're trying to achieve, and perhaps what we can do is we can share some of our tips on how they can go about doing their pitch. I think that's a great idea. Leave it in the comment section below, guys. Anyways, make sure you guys subscribe, follow along the journey, and we will see you guys next week.